What's up, YouTube? Today we're talking about INFP personality types. I personally am an INFP, and there's some things that I dislike about being an INFP. And if I speak, this is something I've just recently kind of developed an interest in. I forget how I even discovered it, but occasionally in the past I've watched some YouTube videos about being an introvert and other things, but never really delved too deeply into it. And the other day, I just kind of randomly stumbled upon a video from an INFP person talking about their personality type, and I really related to it. And I took a Myers-Briggs test, and I discovered I am one, and I'm learning more about it and what it is and everything else. And there's realizing that I'm an INFP has kind of highlighted some things about myself. And there's some things that I dislike about being an INFP. One of the first ones I would say is just being in the minority. We live in a world, I guess you could say, kind of designed for extroverts. We live in a world that kind of prizes or rewards extrovertedness and, I guess, action more so than introvertedness and, I don't know, wandering mind. You guys know what I'm kind of saying here. And it's kind of interesting. I read some books and heard some other people say some similar things. And 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it was actually kind of an INFP probably would have shown a lot more. If you read old books, books and things like that, kind of talk about the strong silent type, or really kind of talk about with a sense of admiration, being modest, being more of a thinker, being deeper, not being so big about networking and social and everything, but having kind of more of a close knit family, close knit group of friends, etc. So I think years ago, INFPs and other introverted type personality types would have shown a lot more, whereas today in this MTV social media world, it's kind of more about the I don't know if loud's the wrong word, but extroverts are much more. I think what people aspire to be like, or what society says is kind of the cool thing. And introverts are a minority. I believe it's something like, I don't know, 6 extroverts to every 1 introvert, or 7 extroverts to every 1 introvert. So the world is definitely more shaped toward rewarding of extroverts. So that's one of the things I just like is being in a minority. Yeah, I know it's cool to be unique and different, and I do kind of pride myself on being my own man and being authentic and kind of not giving a shit what the world wants out of me or what other people may want you to be, etc. But would life be a little bit easier if you were more like everybody else, or if you fit the mold that the world wants you to be? I think absolutely. So that's one thing that I kind of dislike about being an INFP, so to speak. Another thing is something I've seen a lot of other INFPs say is, I don't want to say you lack facial expressions, but if you don't give a shit about something, it's hard to act like you do. And people talk about how they oftentimes maybe have to fake a smile or fake interest or whatever else. And I can definitely relate to being that. Unless I'm like really engaged and really passionate about something, I don't have a death stare or a resting bitch face or anything like that. But I would say I'm more. You're not going to see me making a bunch of like exaggerated facial expressions and things like that. So if I'm out at a bar talking to people, I kind of have to make an effort to smile or do a fake laugh or whatever else. And my girlfriend sometimes gives me a hard time about that. She's like, "Oh, everybody knows you don't want to be here, da da da." And I say, it's not even necessarily like, yeah, bars aren't really my thing, big crowded bars or whatever. But it's not even necessarily that I hate it. It's just, I'm not the person that's going to be like, in the crowd, like head cocked back, like laughing and smiling. It's just kind of not who I am. It doesn't mean I'm not having a good time. It's just, that's one thing I've heard about INFPs, and I can definitely relate to that as well. So that's another thing that I kind of dislike about being an INFP. I guess INFPs also, because we look at situations from so many different angles and kind of over scrutinize and over analyze things, I think that kind of drives me crazy to some extent, and also drives a lot of the people around me crazy. I remember a while back I had to buy a vacuum, and obviously to some extent it's smart not to run out and buy something, and to actually do your research and find the best price and find the best bang for your buck and find the best product. But when it gets to the point where it takes you 6 months and 37 visits to Home Depot to buy a vacuum, that's when you're maybe taking it too far. And my girlfriend has really bad allergies. I have two dogs, so we had to get a good vacuum to kind of make life easier on her. And I remember, like, not only did I research vacuums for weeks on end, reading forums and reviews and everything else, but then we go to the store and I'd look at the vacuums and I'd go back and research them some more. And, like, no lie, I think it took me 6 months and several dozen trips to Home Depot and other stores to finally settle on a vacuum to buy. And I'm kind of the same way about vacations, not only about the destination, but then once you finally pick a destination, you got to pick the actual hotel. And I think the last vacation me and my girlfriend planned, I had booked two. It basically took 3 times to finally book and go on the trip. I'd booked one place, did a bunch of research and stuff, decided maybe I didn't like it, and canceled and lost a couple $100. And then I rebooked another location, totally different location, picked a hotel, finally made the plans and everything. And, obviously you typically tend to plan vacations a little bit ahead of time. So then I had, a month or two to sit there and second guess myself and read more reviews and everything else. And decided, maybe I don't want to stay at this place, and wound up canceling again, losing a couple $100 and rebooking. So I think to some extent the whole overanalyzing and overthinking everything, becomes a headache, and kind of, in addition to making yourself crazy, kind of drives other people crazy. And then kind of the last thing that I'll talk about, there's probably more dislikes I have about the personality type than this. But one of the other things is, and especially, I don't know if it's as I've gotten older, I've allowed myself to get more internal or whatever, but, just second guessing and double thinking about if I send somebody an email, I'll go back and read the email that I sent 10 times and kind of look at every way somebody might interpret that. And same thing with the text message. And, I'm dating a girl now, but even back when I was, in the dating world, and I don't mean to act like, I'm some shut-in or not good with people, like when I was dating, without tooting my horn, I was kind of a ladies' man or whatever. But at the same time, I notice, like, when I'm texting with girls and stuff like that, or, I meet somebody off a dating site and send a message, I do the same thing. I'll write the message and I'll read it 10 times over, and then I'll delete it all and start over. And then I'll send them a message, but then I won't like what I said, or maybe something I said could be interpreted differently. So I'll go back and rewrite it. And to some extent, I find that I kind of drive myself crazy by overanalyzing and overthinking everything. So that's another thing that I dislike about this personality type. I'm kind of going to wrap up the video here, but just in terms of, I've offered problems, but in terms of offering solutions, I watched an interesting video about rewiring your brain for INFPs. And one guy said that, he said, a lot of INFPs can not only overanalyze big decisions, like, it's understandable if you're going to spend a bunch of money to buy a car or a vacuum or take a vacation, it's somewhat understandable that you'd want to make sure you make the best choice, get the best, bargain, make sure you're happy with it, etc. But even when it comes to small things, like which brand of coffee or paper towels should I buy? Like, at the end, like, decisions like that really aren't that serious. Like, if you buy a bad roll of paper towels, 2 weeks down the road, that roll is done with, and you'll go out and buy another one. And even if you decide you hate it, roll of paper towels is what, a couple bucks? So, whatever. If you hate them that much, just throw them away and go buy another one. You wasted $7. It's not a huge deal. So what this guy had kind of said or suggested was basically start just making impulsive decisions. Not about what job should I take or where am I going to move. You should put more thought into those types of decisions. But in terms of, like, if you find yourself overanalyzing, like, should I go out to the bar with my friends tonight? Just make a decision. You know what I mean? Make a split-second decision and don't revisit it, and just do it. And with you're kind of going to start to realize that even if I made the wrong, I guess there is no wrong decision, but even if I made a decision that I didn't, analyze for 30 minutes prior to making, it's typically not the end of the world. Kind of going back to the paper towel example, if you're at the grocery store and you're really hemming and hawing about which type of toilet paper to buy or whatever else, like, gut reaction, grab the first one that you think, don't revisit it, don't think about it again. And this gentleman actually said, as he started doing it, he realized that, hey, the world's not going to end because I made a decisive decision and stuck to it, especially about smaller things. And not only that, but he said the more that he did it, the easier it became to do. So that's kind of a takeaway from this video. If you're an INFP and experience any of the same frustrations or dislikes about the personality type as I do, that's one piece of advice that he gave, is just make a decisive split-second decision and don't come back to it and don't overanalyze it, and just move forward with that decision. And it's going to get easier and easier, and you're also going to realize that by doing so, the world's not going to come crashing down. The other thing, and this is a little bit more, I don't know, abstract or whatever, with the whole INFP or any personality type, I think people have a tendency to almost make things a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what I mean by that is, sorry about that, I had to interrupt the video really quickly, but what I was saying basically was, don't allow it to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'll give you guys an example. I have ADD, or at least I was diagnosed with ADD as a kid. I think everybody's getting diagnosed with ADD these days. So, but I don't want to say ADD is a fictional thing, because some people do have challenges and some people do struggle. And I do know some people who have ADD where it's like clearly they have ADD, like it inhibits their life, it holds them back, etc. But to some extent, like, what is ADD really? Especially when people talk about like, oh, you're borderline ADD or borderline Asperger's, like. Well, what does that even mean? Like, I think we're all unique. We all have our challenges. So, if you have ADD, yeah, you have maybe more of a challenge focusing. Maybe you're more of a daydreamer. But to some extent, would every INFP person also be classified as having ADD? And if so, it's not a medical disorder. It's a personality type. So, it's just kind of a weird thing. Like with the whole ADD thing, like some people are better at math than others. Like, should we come up with a name for a syndrome for people who are not as good as math at others? Like, some people are better at focusing and concentrating than others. Like, I don't necessarily know that one is like a quote unquote disease or illness or inferiority. I think it's just, we're all different. So, but kind of where I'm going with this is with your personality type. Like, use it as a way to realize your kind of natural inclinations, but try not to play into that. And what I mean by that is, if you're an INFP, yeah, you're more of an introvert. Yeah, you're kind of a wanderer. Yeah, but if it comes, if you decide that you need to set goals, or that somebody tells you that you need to be more on a schedule or something like that, don't be like, oh, well, there's no sense in setting goals, or there's no sense in making a schedule because I can't stick to it. I'm an INFP. Like, we all can do things that aren't our natural inclination. Is it more of a challenge? Is it maybe not what we would opt to do ideally? Yes, but I always think it's good to challenge yourself, to step outside your comfort zone, etc. So if you're an introvert, force yourself to do a couple extroverted things every day. Kind of with that whole, force yourself to do something you're scared of type thing. If you're an introvert, force yourself to have so many extroverted activities or interactions on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. And that doesn't mean that you change your personality or are fake or do things that you hate all the time, but just kind of have a balance. So, I'm kind of a homebody. I'm kind of an introvert, but I'll go out to the bar with friends. I'll go, out to a festival with friends. I just know that, the next day I'm going to have a day to myself, which actually yesterday I was out at a Summerfest in Milwaukee with a bunch of friends. And, it was a fun day. I had a good time. But at the end of the day, I was glad to go home and lay in my own bed by myself and watch some TV. And today, I'm kind of having a day to myself of hanging around the house with the dogs and making some videos and watering my plants and maybe reading a good book. And, that's kind of how I relax and rewind and get energized. Because, they say this is kind of getting away from personality types and more into the introvert versus extrovert thing. But they say extroverts are kind of, they get energy and are hyped up by other people and conversation and chatter and action. And introverts find that draining, and introverts are actually charged up or recharged by having some time to themselves, or quiet time, or read a book, or even just being alone, sitting in a field, looking at the beach, whatever it may be. So, just have a balance, force yourself to do some things that aren't necessarily your natural inclination or are a bit outside of your comfort zone. And then make sure you have that time to do your type of stuff, whatever it may be, to recharge and feel less crazy and feel normal again. So that's kind of my little rant about INFP personality types and things that I dislike about it, and as well as some kind of constructive things for how to kind of step outside or, kind of better relate to other people in the rest of the world when you have this personality type. if you're watching this video, I imagine you've probably already done a little bit of research on this. I think INFPs make up 3 or 4% of the population, but it's more heavily female. So there's only going to be like 1% of males who are INFP. So if you're a guy out there who's INFP, it's kind of a rarity, and you may kind of sometimes feel like an outcast, but it is what it is. But curious, any of you other INFPs out there, what do you like or dislike about being an INFP? And anybody else out there who's not an INFP. If you guys have any thoughts on your friends or whoever else who is, would love to hear them. So leave a comment below. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next one.